I've never thought about the anatomy of a penguin, but I do like questions. I believe in the words of Jackie Chan's uncle, it's time for research! What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we have a bit of a special video because of what is going on in the overall disc golf world this week. For some of you watching, you are the super casual disc golfer that I can completely relate to, and you may not realize two things about our sport. The first is that there is actually a professional disc golf scene. There are multiple pros that make millions of dollars a year to throw discs. Not only is there a well-established pro scene, but this week is the World Championships to decide one player who will become the greatest of all in the year 2022. It's actually pretty lit, and I'll link a lot of the channels that are doing post-produced coverage so that you can check it out below for free. With all that being said, we're constantly trying to learn and evolve here on the channel, and I still wanted to put out a video so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't throw me down into the dumpster, but I wanted to put out something that's kind of long-lasting and honestly will help answer some questions you guys have had, as well as welcome so many of you that are new to the channel. So I threw out a bit of an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything for all of you non-internet folks out there, over on Instagram and a YouTube community post. And hot Jiminy, did you guys ask some questions? So without further ado, let's go. There are a lot of beautiful distance drivers out there, but if I had to start at 5 and work my way up to 1, I would say at 5, I'm gonna put in the MVP Wave. I think it's a phenomenal disc that has a lot of flex to it. On 4, I'm gonna put a little bit better feeling Wave. The Honey by Clash Discs, underrated. I think it's gonna be super popular amongst a bunch of players. 3, I'm going the Raider by Dynamic Discs. I think that the Raider lives halfway between my number 1 and my number 2, which is number 2, the Destroyer by Innova, and number 1, you can't be a Crawford if you don't love this disc, and that is the Innova Ray. For me personally, I do not like playing in the cold. Maybe it comes from living in the South where cold is usually in like the 20s or maybe high teens, but being someone who has poor circulation in my fingers, I can't really feel my hands on my putt, which makes me feel off there, and forehands become an absolute tragedy because I have no idea when the disc is actually coming off the fingertip. Seems like a pretty niche game. Yeah, I think that's gonna be a yes, Bob. Look, I'm not out here trying to say the Luna's a bad disc. Clearly, P. McBee throws it pretty well himself. And I'm not trying to say that I'm the next Paul Macbeth, but I have thrown shots like this before with that amazing, beautiful disc when I put everything behind it. Unfortunately, I've also had shots like this with a Luna in the same setting. Yeah. So while I would consider myself someone that might have some value in coaching others, I definitely don't consider myself as someone who has value in passing along musical interests and suggestions. But my favorite musical artist of all time is 100% Owl City. He's been my most listened to artist on Spotify literally every year that I've ever had Spotify, and they've been doing those Spotify recap things. My dream concert is honestly One Direction opening for Katy Perry, who opens up for Owl City. And I'm like 100% good with it in that order. My hope in coaching is that we get more information and more technological advances that allow us to coach better as we sort of dial in what proper disc golf form is so that we can coach people better. Oddly enough, I think that free clinics will also become a more common thing, but also a more rare thing as more people dive into disc golf coaching as an actual career. We'll need to be able to support those coaches so that they can do what they want to do and what they need to do without having to worry about the stress of providing for their families as well. Everybody needs to earn income in an honest way, which is another thing that I think will change in coaching, is that people will see a cash cow ahead of them, and people with lower morals will create false promises and false expectations and tell people that they can get them better without actually having the information or knowledge to actually do that. So I think that coaching certification will also become a very necessary thing rather than just asking you to support them financially because they are a coach. I think looking at all the people that are there and also looking at the comments about the videos, being voted off first, definitely going to be either myself or Mikey because apparently we're too loud. Sorry for the hype, y'all. And winning it overall, super easy answer. It's Chantel, aka Miss Frisbees, because she's pretty much the GOAT and the greatest person that was at the Creators Cup. So Chantel for president of Disc Golf YouTube. I think one of the best ways to test discs, especially ones that you think might have overlap in your bag, is to go out and play one disc rounds or multiple disc rounds. Take the one disc or multiple discs out, try to throw them on the same shots and the same lines and see which you're having the most success with, or or which is the most versatile of those options, and usually that's the one that should probably stay in your bag. This is an excellent question because I think that we can build these massive collections of discs, especially when we're getting into the sport, trying to find and try out all these discs to see if they're right for us. I treat my collection like a library that I put on loan out to people pretty often so that they can try out new molds. You can also look at local schools like middle schools and elementary schools or even high schools that are trying to start a disc golf program and maybe donate your plastic to them so that they have discs to start for their club members. Is a really great option for you. Honestly, I just can't recommend taking your plastic and blessing other people with it enough. The grip is one of those things that it's really hard to work on if we're not in person together talking about it, but something I would suggest is either checking out like a modified fan grip while you have the disc, a fan grip overall, or even alternating the power grip. But there's a lot of videos out there talking about grip. It's something that we definitely want to dive into the channel, but I'm not trying to jump into the debate between iceberg and overthrow either on if the power grip actually exists. I would say the biggest form tip that helped me was thinking about the idea of pouring the coffee first and keeping that active throughout your entire throw. The faster you do that and kind of abandon everything else and you teach that wrist to be pointed down kind of actively so you don't have to think about it, is going to help you in a tremendous amount of way. I can throw a bird confidently about 20 to 50 feet as hard as I want, and it's going to land exactly there. Power of one speeds, right? I hot take am not a huge fan of the Berg. I'll leave that over to Jesse, a trash panda who's out there winning Berg distance competitions. Best PC game outside of the community, which is super toxic. I really love League of Legends. I've been playing it for like close to 10 years now. Super fun. Jungle mains for the win, baby. Let's go. For me, it comes down to replicating what you're doing on the practice screen to what you're actually going to do on the course. You aren't going to walk up on the course with a huge stack of putters under your arm just trying to rapid fire them off. You only get one shot, one opportunity. It's everything you ever wanted. One birdie, one moment. Are you gonna capture it or let it quack? Man, so when I think about the birdie fam just like, it blows my mind every day that there are people who are willing to support me in that way, in that dedication. It's just unreal. My dad kind of instilled in me this idea of the best way to lead people is to get the right people in the room together and get them talking. And the heart of the Birdie fam was inviting as many people into a same space or common space that are in the same level of their game or same struggle so that they can ask questions together. Maybe it's the philosopher in me, but I always believe when people are asking questions, we're going to get better. I do my best to interact in all of it, but honestly, it's grown to such a cool place that there are people asking questions and discussing their journey together, and they're kind of discovering these roadblocks amongst each other, and I'm just there to simply facilitate and make sure people are moving in the right direction. So it's like a crazy cool experience to sit back and watch people learning and applying simple principles to their game and seeing those light bulbs come on one after another. For me, this is absolutely simple. It's the Leopard 3, and it's because for Christmas one year, I got a Leopard 3, and I'm pretty sure that it was actually a Firebird mislabeled as a Leopard 3, but because of that, this disc that everybody said I would love was absolutely way more stable than anticipated, and because of that, the only Leopards that I have in my collection are DX Leopards from the starter set. When I was in college, I was one of those people that would like sleep till the super last moment, wake up, and then roll out to class. So breakfast for me always had to be something that was pretty mobile, and because of that, I started in college eating a breakfast of a Diet Coke, a pack of crackers, and a Slim Jim every day. And as I've gotten older, I've honestly stuck with that habit for the last 12 years. It's just evolved into a bigger Diet Coke, 2 packs of crackers, and 2 Slim Jims. And I almost always have a pack of peanut butter crackers in my bag. So this is something I can actually relate to a lot as I'm trying to make some distance form changes myself. If you don't want to have results and improvement, the best thing you can do is stay static and exactly where you're at. One thing my coach Mike Strauss talks me through all the time is that a new miss means progress. And personally, I would rather have a new miss every other week because I'm trying to improve and strive for better performance than just to accept that this is where I'm going to be at for my game for the rest of my life. Since a lot of people aren't in my videos, the most common thing I get when people meet me in person is, wow, Robbie, you're taller than I thought you were. I come in at 6'3", and while I do think that height gives a certain advantage because of longer levers and things like that, I still think that if you're smaller in stature, you can still throw pretty far if you have the proper mechanics going for you. Look at Emerson Keith, the dude is tiny and throws crazy far. I certainly enjoy the flexibility of what I'm doing now way more than being a pastor, but what I do miss is the community and the being able to connect with people on a regular basis. There's nothing quite like the calling of being able to pour into the next generation as a youth pastor and getting to see them grow up and develop into amazing people over their middle school and high school years. Have I played Catan in the past? Yes, and we have it because we have to have it in our collection, and once again, in order to call ourselves board gamers. But if I open up my version of Catan right here, you'll see that it is literally still in its original packaging, unwrapped and unpunched. I think personally, I love throwing putters, and you can get pretty decent distance out of them. If you have a big arm, you can get them over 300 feet, which is more than enough for most courses on a recreational basis. So right now, if I had to pick one, sorry pigs, I do think I'd actually just pick the Discmania Sensei. Plus, every time I throw a good shot with it, I get to say, "Thank you, Sensei." So this is going to be a bit of a hot take because I'm the beginner guy and I'm all about the positivity, but if you are worried about sandbaggers, the easiest way to stop having people sandbag is for you yourself to just move on up. My first tournament was technically a flex start that was part of an A tier, but really the first tournament overall was an A tier that I played in rec. After that, I got my first rating and immediately moved myself all the way up to advanced. And guess what? Even in advanced, there are sandbaggers who are basically pro players who don't think they can compete in open, so they come down to advanced and play there to try to take the payouts and dummy cash from all the amateur players. So now that I've stepped up to open, even though I'm a mid-level advanced player anyways, I can't really complain about baggers in open, and getting to play against better competition makes me a better player overall. But do I think the rating system is perfect? No. Do I think that every single person out there in the world thinks that they're higher rated than they actually are? Yes. If I were to borrow a rating system from anyone, I would borrow Brody Smith's recommendation, which is that instead of an average, we take our top 40% of our rounds every year, and that is what counts towards our rating. So that way you see the ceiling and potential of a player rather than their average, which would also help the sandbagging issue. But if you don't want to play with baggers, hate to say it, move up yourself. My favorite MVP mold is probably going to be the Reactor. It is the one MVP mold that is so hard for me to replace when I tried going to other options. Stop it. You are just, stop it. But you can keep going if you want, seriously. Absolutely. Seven Wonders has some beautiful art, fantastic gameplay. The replayability is super high, and also I think once you download the app, it is such a game changer because keeping score can be an absolute tragedy in this game. I think in terms of like passing your hand and building the best deck possible, it is definitely the best in its genre, but if you're looking for a more casual version of Seven Wonders with a more fun theme, I'd recommend checking out Sushi Go. Super fantastic, and as someone who doesn't even eat sushi, I still very much enjoy this game. Stamps aren't really a huge thing for me, probably why I avoided Discmania for so long, because I really thought that Discmania was all about putting a special stamp on a normal disc and charging extra for it. But I do love a good disc die, and something weird about stamps is that if I do have the full stamp on, when I grip the disc, 9 times out of 10, I always grip the disc with the stamp facing me in its normal upright fashion. We are going to get some hate for this, but I think it's talked about a lot, and if I had to get the most overrated disc, it's definitely going to be the Buzz. I think it's a phenomenal mid-range that does a lot of really good things, but there are a lot of other mids that are still fantastic that you can definitely check out that do what the Buzz does. And if I had to go for the most underrated mold, we're going to go in the same vein and go with the Buzz GT. There is nothing like the Buzz GT. It is fantastic, it feels incredible in the hand, and it's definitely the best flying Buzz out there. I'm just kidding. The most underrated mold is definitely the Polecat. Those are some excellent questions that someone should put on a podcast where they interview people about their bag. I ran this while I was out filming today. For backhand distance, I would say controlled, I'm looking at about 375 to 380. Forehand, I can push that up to about 400, especially if there's wide open space. I am pretty comfortable flexing something or flipping something up on a hyzer flip. For putts, it got a little dicey because I was putting on a Mach 3. From 15 feet, I made 10 out of 10. From 25, I made 7 out of 10 with a questionable spit out. And from 40 feet, I made 5 out of 10 because we were having a pretty good Circle 2 day once we got that dial. For me, I'm a little biased when it comes to recommending a bag. If you're looking for a fantastic, like, beginner starter bag that's super cheap, I think the Dynamic Dish Trooper is hard to beat at $40. But if you're looking to take that next step and go into a bag that is great for experienced players and has a lot of room, it's hard for me to recommend anything other than the Atlas Pioneer. Obviously, I'm extremely biased, but this is a fantastic bag at under $100, has a ton of sturdiness to it, and the quality of the material is super hard to beat. So yeah, the Pioneer by Atlas. So my undergraduate degree is in philosophy, and my senior thesis was on the field of aesthetics, sort of judging the question or asking the question of how do we define beauty, and is beauty limited by our language? For religion, I got a master's in divinity with a focus in leadership. I'm pretty strategic and like introspective, and I'm all about sort of analyzing everything in life and trying to become as efficient as possible possible and also how to be as effective as possible. Trying to figure out how to utilize unique shots and opportunities and what is the best way to score the best, the fastest. Yeah, it's like a big puzzle to me, and I love helping people overcome that puzzle in their own games. So I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but when it comes to fieldwork versus rounds, I think it really comes down to how much you enjoy the game and which one you find more enjoyable. I do think you can have productive practice while you're out there on the course, but I also fully believe that it's more effective to be out there in fieldwork because you get more reps faster and more efficiently when you're doing field work. Something that I try to preach to people pretty often is if you're looking to get sponsored by someone, then you shouldn't throw just their discs. I don't care who they are, I don't care what promises they're trying to tell you. If you are throwing all of their discs, then you do not bring any more value to the company, whether they sign you or not. You can't be you even more. So if all of you is already dedicated to throwing all of their stuff, then yeah, why would they sign you? They literally have no reason. So with that being said, when I left Team Innova, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just sticking with an all Innova bag, because if that's the case, then they definitely had no reason to try to keep me on or try to progress, because I would be progressing their brand anyways. No, I'm not that kind of person to do it on my old card. What are you talking about? Although I've definitely done it to people that I dislike. Yeah. You know who you are. Getting my wings was one of the coolest experiences in disc golf, because being on Team Innova was a dream from the time that I really got into the sport. So it was a really cool opportunity, and the stuff that they do for their team members is actually kind of insane. You get a fixed allotment of discs, and you basically just get to browse and say like, yeah, I want some of those, and some of those, and yeah, team stamps would be great. Then they also have like what feels like an unlimited amount of apparel that you're allowed to order. If you're like, yeah, I want a stool, they send you that. If you want an umbrella, they send you that. It's like super cool how much they want to deck you out with Innova stuff. And unlike other teams, they don't necessarily put like a price number that you can spend this much. It just kind of felt like unlimited to a degree. But obviously there were struggles. I think one of the hardest parts was I went to Innova originally because when I got into creating content, I saw what Danny Lindahl was doing for the beginner scene, and I wanted to be like Danny, and I saw Danny was connected with Dynamic Discs, and I thought, man, I could be that guy for Innova and be their beginner guy or their starter guy. And when I first started talking to them, that was definitely the direction that we were moving in. Unfortunately, in my time with them, I kept trying to push forward and do more to help grow the Innova brand and help reach more beginners for Innova. And it just kind of seemed like Innova wasn't really interested in that at the time, including a conversation with some higher ups where I was literally told that I didn't have the gravitas or value that was worth it to be on the Innova YouTube channel, which was honestly a bummer to hear. But you know, they made their decision, and I think at the moment they're just not really ready to work with beginners because they're focused on the pro scene to a degree. And if you're not a pro player, there's not a ton of value for them on the big scale of trying to progress the Innova name forward. And that's okay. That's a strategy they're choosing to go with. And currently that just means that I don't fit into the Innova plan. And so for the sake of them and for the sake of what I need to do with the Robbie C brand, we decided it was best for both to part ways. And I hope that maybe one day in the future we might be able to partner up again. It was sick getting to rep the wings, and I made a lot of new friends and look forward to future partnerships with both Innova and maybe other companies. If I've said it once, I've commented it 1,000 times. I straight up did not know that there was water there, and I would never take someone's favorite disc and throw it into the water like that. I am not that dark of a human being. Did it give us a competitive advantage in the Creators Cup? Yes, but I literally have a disc I call my precious child, and I totally did not mean to shankaroni that thing into the water. But if Trevor wants more birdies in his life, I'm not saying he shouldn't throw a pig. This is a tough question, and I'm always curious what house people would sort me into, and most often it's not the right house. But if you've watched other things in my affinity to villains, you probably could guess that I live in the best house, and that is Slytherin all day, baby. I think my greatest disc golf memory still comes from early on in the channel when we were under 1,000 subscribers and I was at a tournament. I just played really poorly myself. There was a group of guys all celebrating because one of their friends had just won the rec division, and they asked if I'd be willing to take a picture for them. And I said, 1, 2, 3, leave him with the birdie, took the picture, and the guy who had won kind of paused for a minute and said, wait, you're Robbie C. I've been watching your videos and it totally helped me win the tournament today, which is when I realized that my job in this sport was never going to be being the next Paul Macbeth or being the next guy that wins every tournament he shows up to. It makes me so much happier that you guys are out there using the information, and it makes all the time spent talking to a camera in the middle of the woods worth it, knowing that we're making the sport a better place and that you guys are enjoying the game more and performing better out there, perhaps because of what we're saying here. I don't think that Robbie Crawford PDGA number 128799 will have a lasting impact on the sport of disc golf overall, but my hope is that Robbie C Disc Golf as a channel and a brand will actually help change the face of beginners in disc golf for the future in a positive way. I think it's a very short list. At the top of my list would probably be Charlotte, because it just seems like there is disc golf all over that place and it's absolutely booming and has great weather year round that I'd be able to film year round as well. My second option would be to go to Valhalla, the dream state that I've always wanted to go to, which is Minnesota. And then third option would be to move closer to family, and I think Atlanta actually has a pretty good up and coming disc golf scene, but that traffic about to be a big yoinks. One of my favorite things to do with the YouTube channel is actually connect with other content creators who are trying to get started in the disc golf YouTube space. And something I say repeatedly in those lessons is that you have to act like a professional from day one, even though you're not getting paid or treated like a professional. So I actually was uploading for about 2 months on a regular, consistent basis before I had a single video take off and start finding success. I remember posting this video right here and seeing it start to take off and get a couple thousand views, which was crazy at the time, and we watched the subscribers start rolling in. In fact, Lindsay baked me a cake to celebrate 300 subscribers, and by the time the cake was done baking, we were over 600 subscribers. When they look this pretty, it's yeah, it's pretty tough for it not to just simply go farther. Outside of disc golf, I pretty much am the biggest extrovert that you're ever going to meet. I go like full Ariel. I want to be where the people are. Whether it's hanging out with friends and going to trivia at a local brewery, or having people over to our house for a board game night, or sitting down at the computer and playing League of Legends with friends, I pretty much always want to be spending time with other people. I rarely like to spend time alone, especially because I spend a lot of time alone when it comes to doing the whole YouTube thing. So I've got a pretty good relationship with Josh over at Overthrow, and we've talked about this a considerable amount, and I think both are extremely important. The physical side of things is super important to get you to execute correctly. It doesn't matter what your mind's telling you if your body is stopping you before the disc is even released. But I think Josh is a phenomenal teacher at that side of things, and so I do prefer to lean more on the mental side of things, because I believe even with a limited skill set, if you have the right mentality and you approach the game in a specific way, you can always score better while you're out there. So while I love to coach the mental side of things, I will always need people like Josh in my life and Josh in the sport overall, because I do think that together we can help try to shape the beginnings of the next generation of disc golfers to become complete and amazing human beings and great golfers. So this is something that I actually coach people in quite often, talking about minimalizing the number of molds in your bag and having duplicates. But if you are switching your bag around or you're newer, I do think that people can get too focused in on mold minimalization because they haven't had the time to cycle or beat discs in enough. While there are variances in flights between plastic types of the same mold, there is definitely a difference in flight between stages of wear and tear depending on how long you've had the disc in your bag. It may literally be better to have multiple molds in your bag rather than trying to dive in and make this one mold work. Don't miss the forest for a specific tree of mold minimalization. I would say it's when I realized what shots worked for me and when I started looking for high percentage shots while I was out there on the course. For a while, overhand approach shots put me right next to the basket every time, and that became a staple part of my game, and it's something that I still use to scramble to this day. But also when I realized how consistent it is to throw hyzers while you're on the course, and then finding my first overstable putt and approach disc to create those hyzers with, it's difficult for me to think back to times before those discs and realize how I was finding any success while I was out there on the course. Find what works for you and use it as much as you possibly can on the course, as long as it's healthy for your body. So we've acquired quite a few Frisbees over the year, and like I said, I like to think of it more like a library. When you go behind the curtain, you'll see that we have our pigs over here in this section, followed by the mid-ranges. Below that, we have the distance drivers. These are discs I'm trying to feel out or get some more practice with. This is like a bag of training discs that I use for all the lessons I give. These are backups to the discs that are currently in my bag that don't go in the backup box that goes in the car with me to tournaments. These are all different putter molds. These are all different fairway molds. Tucked back here in the dark corner is my Discraft stuff, and all of these boxes have discs in them as well, whether they're backups to my tournament bag or team stamp Champ discs from Innova, or even this whole box, which is simply just pig. We've got a lot of frisbees. And this last shelf is probably my favorite because it has a lot of discs that have sentimental value to me, such as my first overstable putt and approach disc. This was the putter I won my first tournament with. This is the putter that I used to get my first win in Open, and other discs that just have some real sentimental value to me. I like to claim the title that I'm the biggest Minnesota sports fan that has ever existed that has never been to the state of Minnesota. If you think you can compete with me on that, let me know in the comments below. Honestly, in early 2011, when the Vikings weren't that great, I decided that I was going to be a Vikings fan because they had a dope mascot, and I was really trying to learn the sport of football at the time, and the team that I was a fan of had a very similar offensive scheme. So I've just been a Vikings fan ever since, and I'm pretty diehard passionate about it, as well as other Minnesota sports outside of the Braves, which I've been a Braves fan my entire life. So fun fact, the pig was actually not the first like overstable putt and approach disc that I ever came across. My first overstable putt and approach disc that I saw and fell in love with, and the disc that opened up my mind to like that mold in general, was in fact the AVR X3. I dyed this myself when I was getting into dyeing, and this disc changed my game in such a phenomenal way. But as my game improved and increased, I realized that at like 225 to 250 feet, that this disc wasn't holding as overstable as something else. So I actually went out and tested a lot of the overstable putt and approach discs as an alternative to the AVR X3, and it came down to two molds, one being the pig and the other actually being the Discmania Tactic. And I spent about 2 to 3 weeks playing 2 disc rounds with just a Tactic and a pig, going side to side, back and forth, seeing which one won out, and eventually, you guys guessed it, the pig won, because after all, pig is love, pig is life. My dream hole is about 400 feet of open space leading up to a water carry that takes me to an island green with about a 250 foot water carry to a smaller isolated green, letting me open up on a shot and also test how far I want to throw the disc to make the island or water carry even shorter. I love the strategy of how you're going to attack something, and it would be very curious to me seeing how people would play that par 4, we call it. So at the end of the day, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I hope you guys enjoy this odd format and had a great time sort of seeing behind the curtain and maybe getting to know me a little bit better, and you've realized I'm probably a pretty weird person, and that's okay. We lean into it. I want to say thank you so much for watching as always. It means so much to me to continue to see y'all pour in and leave comments and leave feedback every single week. I hope you go out there and have an amazing day, and that you can make it fantastic for someone else too. You got this. But for now, I'm gonna leave you with the birdie.